Good afternoon.
Good
I have a
afternoon.
new friend. I'm Betty Fishman, Artistic Director from ArtLink, and you are?
My name's David Wegman.
Nice meeting you. All right. We just had a geography lesson this afternoon. You just gave me one. You said that you left your boat in New Zealand and wended your way to Fort Wayne, all right, to see some relatives. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you are an artist, which is why I guess they teamed the two of us together, being an art director. You're a wandering artist. I'm very impressed with particularly where you've been and what you've done with your art. You've done a little of everything, but primarily you're a painter. Is that correct?
That's correct. Oil and pastel.
All right. Well, tell me about New Zealand and tell me about your boat. First, you built your boat?
Yeah, I built my boat launched in 1981, and well, let me put it this way: I got it sailing in 1981, and then from then on, it's been for the last 12 years. I've been working on it, even sailing across the Pacific, rearranging things down below and getting it to a point where it's comfortable to sail and safe, and changing things all the time. And it's kind of that way when it's not like buying a production, a factory boat where everything is made for you and put together and designed, finished. This is my boat here.
Yeah.
I started out, with I put a telephone pole in for a foremast, and I built the main mast, and then a friend gave me some used sails, and I pulled the rigging, which are the stay wires, out of a dumpster that somebody had thrown away, and in a few days I had it sailing and no engine, and I sailed it for 3 years around the Virgin Islands and between Grenada, down the leewards and windwards, just with no engine. So after being becalmed a few times and sitting in channels maybe just a mile from an anchorage, a calm anchorage, I put a little 7-horse diesel in it. And
you're not pure anymore now.
No, not pure, but it just gets me in, and it saved me a lot of times of staying out all night and not making it into an anchorage before dark and stuff like that. So it's been a real benefit.
All right.
To have
So
it.
actually, now from all of your experiences that you've told me that you've had in your sailing, this is all reflected, of course, in the places where you've been, and it reflects in your art. I noticed in looking at some of the small pieces that you have and some of your photographs that you reflect the sea, and you told me as we were talking prior to this interview that you respect the sea.
Yeah, that's one thing I learned very early in my sailing experience. It goes back to 1972. It was I was 27 years old, and it was right on my birthday. I bought a boat. I'd only been sailing 6 months and barely sailing. Most of the time I worked on the boat. It was an old Cuban refugee boat I bought down in Key West, and I worked on it, and I learned to sail just around the the channel, and then again didn't have any motor in it, and no charts, and very little navigation equipment and stuff like that. And in fact, I didn't even know that much about navigation. Coming from Indiana, I was like
So your home is Fort Wayne?
Yeah, Fort Wayne.
You're
Born here.
Okay, born in Fort Wayne.
And lived here till I was
Not too many sailors come from Fort Wayne.
26. But once in fact, I was into race cars when I was in Fort Wayne. I had as a sideline. I worked on other people's race cars, made parts for them, because I grew up in a machine shop. But I sold the race car in Florida and bought this sailboat, and it was an old Cuban refugee boat, 30-foot gaff rig, and paid $1,000 for it, and I worked on it, and then on my birthday I said, well, I took me and another friend. He was just I think he was 20 years old, just out of high school practically. He didn't know nothing about sailing either. So we sailed, we said we'd sail 60 miles out in the open sea and to the Dry Tortugas, which is just west of Key West. And, we heard about it's, really good diving, and there's an old Civil War prison fort there, and it sounded really exciting, like a good adventure. But we never quite made it. There was a tropical depression building up off of Honduras then, and I didn't even know what a tropical depression was then.
I'm not sure I know.
But it's like the next stage to a hurricane.
Okay.
So, as luck would have it, leaving on my birthday, the tropical depression started moving north, and we started heading to the west. And the first night out, we got into some gales off of this tropical depression because it spread pretty far out. It was in about a 500-mile radius that this started, but the wind started building from 60 miles an hour, and it was building. We were listening to the radio, and it was coming up to close to a hurricane strength, and they classified it as Hurricane Agnes. So we could just see the light of the Tortuga Light, and we got in a gale, which is a wind over 35 knots, 35 miles an hour, and ripped some sails and some rigging, and we had to just take everything down and drift. And by the next day, daylight, we were couldn't see any land and weren't quite sure where we were. And so this went on, to make a long story short, for about 10 days altogether. We were out in the Gulf of Mexico. And
how long were you prepared to be away from
not quite
land?
that long, but especially we didn't have any charts. We had one chart from Key West to the Dry Tortugas, but that was it. But it didn't do us any good after the wind, these gales kept blowing us farther and farther out into the Gulf. But I did have a Texaco road map of Florida, and so I started using that, and I knew enough then to hold up a little transistor radio, and there's a method of you listen to the radio station, and like I could get St. Petersburg, Miami, and Tampa, and I could get a rough idea within maybe 20, 30 miles of where I was. And also they'd give the coordinates of the hurricane, which was coming up towards us by then, and it had just come up off of between Yucatan and the tip of Cuba there, and the winds were building up, and I think it was we were about out like 6 days or something like that, and the hurricane was about 100 miles from us and blowing at about 140 to 150 miles an hour, and the seas were about 30 feet. It looked kind of like going through the Smoky Mountains. One minute you'd be down in the valley, and the next minute you'd be high up on top of a hill. And so the boat just kind of bobbed around like that. But it was leaking really bad. That was the big problem. And the only thing we had was it was leaking in the stern. I remember I was in we had two cabins. I was in the aft cabin where it was leaking the worst. My friend was in the bow bailing that. But so we bailed, night and day. It seemed like every hour on the hour I was like with water up to my waist and throwing the water out the hatch with a bucket. And this went on, and finally the hurricane passed us. And I don't know how we did it, but we kept it going. It's like I think it was the water would wake us up, or at least me. You just can't sleep underwater. There's something about it. So
Never tried.
a lot of times I'd throw a bucket of water out, and then 20 buckets would come back in. But I managed to keep it floating. So then the hurricane passed us, and we thought, well, we got to get back to land, and it was pretty easy to figure out where land was because we knew we were in the Gulf of Mexico, just sail back east again. So, and it was lucky the wind was blowing that way, so I put up a little tiny jib, and we sailed for another day, and sure enough we spotted the coastline of Florida, and the boat was still leaking really bad. So we'll run it up on the beach. We'll find a nice sandy place and go right up on the beach, because I didn't have any charts for inlets or anything like that. So we're looking along the beach, and I see this sandy place. I see a black funeral hearse up on the beach. And I thought that really strange after what we went through, to see something like that at the end of a storm, to see a funeral hearse with a guy in a suit standing next to the door. So it looked like the likely spot, so I ran right up in front of this funeral hearse on the beach, and was just outside of Venice, Florida.
All right.
And we landed, and we get off the boat, and I go up, and the guy says, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Well, yeah, well, I think so. Who are you? Are we dead? What is this? So you come to pick us up?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm just a city councilman. I own the local funeral home in Venice, Florida here, and I'm just out surveying the road damage, but I just happened to take the..."
That would be quite a sight after
So
an ordeal.
that was quite an ending to that whole ordeal, but we did survive, and I ended up, you'd think the sailing would be the last thing I'd want to do after that, but 6 months later I had another boat I bought up in Annapolis, Maryland, and I started to figure a lot more out about sailing. And from then
How
on,
does sailing, which has obviously been your way of life for a number of years, how does that coincide with art? I mean, I've been interested in asking you how, do you carry your art materials with you on the boat?
yeah, I keep a pretty good selection of material, paper, and I keep a portfolio of like watercolor paper, pastel paper.
And this is compatible with the water of the sea?
Well, yeah, it sometimes with the other older boats I've had some problems with things getting wet, but this boat I have now is fiberglass hull with laminated plywood decks with fiberglass over that, so it stays pretty dry.
Do you do sketches, say, in different places where you stopped? Now, you've already told me that you've done some interesting sketches right here in Fort Wayne, but do you do sketches at every port where you
Almost
call?
every, that's right. In fact, after I got this second boat, I sailed it back to Key West, and my dream then was to go down to the islands and see the Bahamas, and which I did. And me and my girlfriend Barbara at the time, we left and sailed away, and I spent 3 years sailing through the Bahamas and the leewards, the windwards, all the way down like Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and St. Martin, St. Bart's, St. Kitts.
Were you painting at that time too?
What I did, every island that I stopped, I did pretty much, the only thing I did was black and white, like these the pen and inks I was showing you that I did at Fort Wayne places. But I would do things like boat builders, building boats on the beach, which I knew eventually it was a dying art, and I'd come back and the whole scene would be gone. I wouldn't be able to, or nobody would even see it anymore. So
now, did you go to art school at any time, or do you consider yourself self-taught, self-trained?
Well, pretty much self-taught, because it's something I've always done. When I started out in Fort Wayne, I started after high school working in a factory, but somehow it just wasn't my cup of tea. So on the side, I did portraits in like malls and county fairs, and that got me started in it. I found out I could make money doing it and make a living. And
we're leading up to that, because do you really support yourself with your art?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
and okay, I'm going to ask you then how you go about that part of it. How do you go about marketing your art?
I figured out, there's, when you think about art, there's so many different ways that you can, like you can use art to make an income, like T-shirts, as a form of art. It's like a commercial art. So I've done lots of T-shirts, through the islands, and
all with motifs that
of boats, and depending on maybe like a lot of the pen and inks that I did through the islands. I made silk screens in the late 70s of them, and I used them. I sold, especially this one place in the French island. I became really well known for my T-shirts, and people would come back year after year to see what new shirts were hanging up in this little bar called the Les Select in St. Bart's. And a good friend of mine, it was in his family for years, this bar. So
you said you made some of these T-shirts right on the beach?
Right on the beach, and upstairs above the bar. I would be, when he has a
Art
little,
on the spot, sort
in
of.
fact, he has a little place called Cheeseburger in Paradise. It was a little cheeseburger stand outside the bar, and that was one of his most, the biggest selling t-shirts. I think I did one year 1,000. He sold 1,000 of them. But I was doing it by hand. Like
With a silk screen.
Now I wasn't even I started out, I wasn't even silk screening. I was taking paper and cutting out paper
Stencils?
of a cheeseburger, making stencils and spraying, and I got tired of smelling the spray, and I thought,
It's not good for you.
well, what I did, I had a friend that had a silk screen company, and right then it was about the time when laser printing came out, where they could laser scan a color picture and give you back film positives and make you can make screens of it. So that's what I did. I sent them up and had that done, and my friends sent the screens down, and we printed them, and then he still sold them for the same price, and he's still selling them there.
Well, now you said some of the backgrounds it looks like tie-dye.
Yeah, well,
But it is not, right?
This is like I got into doing the backgrounds on the beach there. I'd lay, like especially, I started out with these world shirts, and they're front and back. I'd lay maybe 50 of them in a row.
Right on the beach.
Right on the beach, and then I had somebody help me with a frame with string, stretched with string across, and I'd lay fishnet on it and stuff like that. And that's where you see
That makes it look organic, right?
makes it look like kind of like a satellite photo of the clouds or something like that. So it really made a nice effect. I've used palm leaves, anything to mask off the white, and then take the plant sprayers. I found I could take plant sprayers and mix up just silkscreen ink, and there was no smell of spray or anything like that.
Well, it's safer outdoors.
Much safer outdoors, and I just sprayed them all, flip them over, do one side, then flip them all over and go down and do the other side. So,
And then you sell them on the spot.
and then I'd sell them through my friend's bar there. I'd just sell them to him, and he would, like in a week, I'd go off sailing, maybe over down to St. Kitts or someplace, come back a week later, and he'd say, we're all sold out, make us up another batch. It was like, doing the hamburgers was almost like frying them, like a Powers or something. I'd have about, 100 of them going at the same time, flipping them over and doing the fronts and the backs, but I got kind of tired of doing that, and then, so then there was a silk screening place there, and I just turned the screens over to them, and I said, well, just give me a percentage.
All right. So you
and
sold
now
your designs.
I sold my designs to them, and that's where I left it. And then I got back into doing more pastels and oils. I still, at the same time, I did do I had this little studio up above the bar, and I did like this is one here of this.
This is the
This is an
bird.
oil print. This is that same type. This is when I was spraying the oil on t-shirts. I thought, well, I can do the same thing, because I did this same print on shirts. And I said, well, I can sell them for a lot more money if I just do it on paper, and it takes the same amount of time. So
And this is the sea fan that you use
yeah,
for a blackout,
sea
right?
fan, and there's string in there, and this it's just ordinary spray paint, but it has a nice effect. It's on paper. So I did a whole series of those, and I don't even do those anymore. But mainly now I'm working like in these pastels, and maybe working in the future of doing reproductions and stuff like that,
Yes,
and lithographs.
now how you market your larger pieces?
Well,
Is it tourist trade, perhaps?
no,
in the
I try and
islands?
the
Or
pelican
galleries?
or pole art I stay away from and another thing, I stay away from trying to match wallpaper and curtains and stuff like that. My things are pretty much visions I see, places I go, and things I want to relay, like,
I just wondered, if the people who are on vacation, if they see the work, like to take your work back, if that's one way
that would be one way if they could afford it, but a lot of the tourist places, usually the tourists are looking for t-shirts and maybe a print or something like that. I've done greeting cards, postcards.
You've done everything, and
I've tried a little bit of everything.
let's look at some of the things that you've done just since you've been in Fort Wayne. How long have you been here?
I've been 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and you've done all the little historical places like Powers Hamburger, right?
Yeah.
All right.
It's kind of what I mentioned before about
Right.
the boat builders on the beach. but maybe someday Powers won't be there, or maybe
And
someday
you've got Zesto stand on Broadway,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Place
we
where I
have-
used to go. I used to go to the Indiana show. Walk over there with my brother, and after the show, which was just a block away, we'd get the Zesto, and it hasn't changed from my knowledge. My
Here we
vision.
have Rialto Theater, that's on Calhoun Street.
Yeah, I went
right?
there to see Gone with the Wind.
Oh, yes, well, we lament all these things that go. This is
O'Sullivan's Bar.
O'Sullivan's Bar.
That's been a bar.
That's your bicycle
That's
in
it,
front?
right in front there.
Okay, what else do we have here?
We've got
Neil's Oyster Bar.
It's the oldest saloon tavern in Fort Wayne.
Oldest saloon tavern. All right, so you're telling us things about our own city. Now, what about this one? You
This
say
is something I didn't know. I found out yesterday is the oldest hot dog stand in America
in America. All right.
by 2 years.
We have some interesting claims to fame here, and I think you've documented them all. What do you plan to do with those?
Well, if I come back to Fort Wayne again, I'll maybe do another series of pen and inks, and eventually, when I think I have enough, I'll do a book. I can do a book with it, this is maybe T-shirts for Coney Island.
T-shirts for Coney Island.
This
all
one
right.
here, he's going to use. I sold him. He's going to use the menu for menu.
Oh, all right.
So there's a lot of ways that once you make it the original.
You can't get away from the sea. I noticed that your clouds have fish shapes.
Yeah, well, I
up here.
figured all these the clouds turn into this is the Zesto stand turns into ice cream cones.
Right.
But I was thinking of the oyster bar. What better things to turn clouds into? Oysters and fish, right?
Yeah, oysters don't make exactly very good images, do they?
No,
Floating in
but
the clouds and
they do.
nice fish look
If
better.
you stretch it a little bit, it'll.
Okay.
But I had lunch there the other day, and I'm telling you, that's some of the best seafood. I had a seafood salad. It was like it put Key West to shame.
All right.
Sure.
Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to hear that. These are very detailed. Now let's see. O'Sullivan's Pub has the clouds are. I see a soccer ball.
Rugby balls, soccer balls, basketballs, baseballs, because it is a sports bar. If you go inside, it's kind of a.
You're telling us
place.
the history. These places are in Fort Wayne, or some of the older landmarks that you'd like to see left.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
Would you?
I'd be real sad if I came back and saw the Zesto
Rialto
stand
Bar.
or the Rialto Theater,
Right.
like
How
those
old
down.
is this? This, the Heliotis family, I think, was the
No,
family
I don't
in
have the
Fort
date
Wayne.
on that one, but the Powers hamburger is 19 in the early 40s, and it's still owned by the original family.
Yeah.
I talked to Marilyn Powers the other day, and her father started it, I think, in 1941 or in the early 40s. And he got the idea, she said, from up in Detroit. There were some hamburger stands where they fried the onions in the hamburger.
You can smell it within 2 blocks on a still day in Fort Wayne.
Yeah. And she told me that she makes 150 pounds worth of hamburgers a day. And I said, well, how many hamburgers is that? And she didn't even know. But so I went and got a little calculator, figured it up, and it's 2,400 hamburgers on an average a day. And Coney Island is, he said, between 1,200 and 1,400 hot dogs a day. That's a lot of meat.
Yeah, well, it tells you what Fort Wayne likes to eat a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, what are you going to do when you leave? When you leave here, where are you going?
I'm going to have a show in Miami the end of September. So I'll drive back down there. But
Now, do you have enough artwork already produced?
I've got more things in the truck and that are under glass I'm working on. But I have a studio up in Maine that I built about 12 years ago on an island on a lake.
Now, you've been going up there how long to Maine?
Since 1980.
That's an artist colony area up in Maine.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
not
getting to be
particularly
now,
where
yeah.
you are, but Haystack is up there. There are a number of artist
Down
colonies.
closer to the coast it is.
Yeah.
But I'm about 100 miles from the coast, and first I lived in a teepee. When I'd go up in the summer, I skinned out 18 poles and got a canvas and lived in a teepee, and then
Did you decorate it?
slowly, well, I kind of, yeah, you might say.
All right, okay.
But I slowly then, every summer, because I only go up there maybe 1 or 2 months a year, just after black fly season.
Oh, yes.
And I started this cabin. I picked out a spot and got me a chainsaw and some spikes and cut down some trees right in the area there and skinned the logs out and notched them. First year I got halfway up, and the second summer I reached to the ceiling, and the third summer I put a floor and the beams up, and the next summer I went back and I tar papered it in and took everything out of the teepee and moved in. And then since then I put a better roof on it. But all the windows I got from the dump. You know, all the furniture came from the dump, secondhand store, stuff like that.
Well, you did tell me that you like to recycle things.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of waste in the world, so if you can kind of use it to your advantage, that's what I usually do. You know, with the truck I drive, it's a $500 truck that I've put about $100 in the last 6 years. And I feel safer driving an older truck than you know, on the highway.
Feel good about all of it.
Yeah,
Well, when will you leave and go back to your boat in New Zealand?
I'll go back in October.
All
I'll
right.
go back and it'll be the
And
beginning
then
of
you
summer
have some
again.
plans to go from New Zealand. Where are you going to go then?
I'm going to sail to Vanuatu, which is about 700 miles due north of New Zealand. And I've heard tales of natives, some natives there that have never seen a white person. That are
You can go in fairly shallow waters with your boat,
yeah,
can't you?
I can go, and then there's a river. I could leave the boat, and then hike up inland. And these people, it's kind of, I'm a musician. I play violin and banjo, and I'm interested in other music from other cultures. And because traveling and sailing, I play along with, like in Costa Rica, I met musicians there, the local musicians, and all through Polynesia. I met musicians that I played with.
Yeah.
The musicians in Vanuatu make music by slapping water in rhythms.
Oh, all right.
Which is,
All right.
so I thought I'd take me a little tape recorder, I had a little, like a Sony cassette, and go up, take my banjo maybe and a violin, and hike up and see if I can get some kind of a communication going, musical communication, and then make some sketches and
Okay.
and that could
You
be
know, I
my
want to
next
really,
picture.
I want to wish you luck. What about you? On these adventures, and I know you're going to come back to Fort Wayne because you have family here.
Oh, I'll be back.
But it's been a pleasure talking with you today. And if you have time, come down and see me at the art gallery on 437 East
Yeah,
Berry
I'll
Street.
do that. I'll do that.
All right. We'd like to see you.